Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is, of course, a Xamarin University Guest Lecture, and today we are excited to have Geert van der Cruijsen with us. And he is a consultant with Xpirit, but he's also a Xamarin University training partner, and so he delivers Xamarin University curriculum materials and on-sites in his area of the world, which is the Netherlands. And he's coming today to talk about behavior-driven development for mobile applications, and he's going to touch on some test cloud and all other kinds of cool stuff. So I'm going to stop talking and let Geert take it away.
Yes, thank you, Mark, and welcome everyone. For me, it's a good evening. So for everyone from Europe and not from the US, good evening, and well, to the other people in the world, good morning or good afternoon. Today I'm going to talk about behavior-driven development for mobile apps, and let's start with a quick introduction. Mark already mentioned I'm from the Netherlands. I work at Xpirit, which is a small consulting firm in the Netherlands where I help our customers deliver better mobile apps. So I really help our customers in improving their mobile application development by taking a lead developer role or an architect role, or just teaching them Xamarin as a classroom trainer. And today we're going to talk to Xamarin University, so I'm really excited. Not doing this kind of online training that often. Most often I'm just there in a classroom seeing the people that I'm actually teaching instead of having them somewhere all over the world. So let's just get started. Today we're going to talk about behavior-driven development, and well, to explain this best, I'm first going to talk about what exactly is behavior-driven development. Then we're going to talk about why would you want to do this when building your Xamarin applications, and of course we're also going to look into how we can do this using Xamarin, Xamarin Test Cloud, and Specflow. So let's get started with the what is behavior-driven development, or BDD for short. And I think the best way to explain this is by using a example. So let's picture a typical software project or a mobile application project. Most of the times it starts with some business guy having a certain idea, and of course this guy is not technical at all, but he has some great idea that will change the world and will make a lot of money. So he will hire a certain developer, or he already has a development team, and he will try to explain his idea to the developer. But the developer, of course, talks in a different language. They know about code, they know about software, but they oftenly don't speak the same business language as this business user. So quite often we get some form of requirements as a Word document, or using other tools to define this, maybe even have user stories in TFS or Visual Studio Team Services, but mainly in plain text. And then this developer will start building a product, building a mobile app in our case, using Xamarin. And of course the developer and the product really go well together because they speak the same language, right? The product knows the code language that the developer speaks. But what happens is, well, when this product is finished, or the first version is finished, then our business guy will get his first display of what was actually understood by the developer when he explained his idea to the developer. And then traditional waterfall methods that we were used to when building software, well, for me several years ago, it could take up to several months or even a year before a project would actually go live for the first time. And quite often the business was shocked, this wasn't what I was expecting. And of course, last several years, more and more agile development came into play. So this months turned into weeks. So every sprint there would be a potentially shippable product. So then the business would get his feedback on the ideas he would explain to the developer. But weeks is still quite long. So that's where BDD tries to improve this, is by creating a communication flow between the business and the developer by coming up with a number of really specific examples on what this business guy is talking about. So if he had an idea, the developer tries to explain this. So, what would happen when I do this and this, then you should do this. So some really specific examples. And what should happen if some other case happened. This is really a thing that helps come to a one understanding between the business and the developer before the developer will actually start building the product, and this is called BDD. And to prove that it's quite hard to get the right requirements, and we often just start building without requirements, without having clear requirements, I would like to do a small experiment with you so people can type, right? So in our example, we're going to build an application that is a weather application. And for now, I'm the business guy, and all of you who are in the classroom are my developers. And I want to build an application, and I want to be able to show the weather on the screen. So for now, you are the developers, but you're also the application running and displaying some text, and the text should be just typed in chat. And let's just all do this together. So please wait, pressing enter before anyone else. So just when I say press enter, then type in your text. So what I would like you to do is, my requirement is for you to display the current weather or the current temperature at your current location. Could you display that on the screen and type it in chat? What is the current weather and temperature at your location? I'll give you 10 seconds, and then we all press enter at the same time. See if everyone has the same idea about this requirement. So type in your weather, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Press enter. There's only one answer coming in. Anyone else typing their Mark? Can the other people also type or not?
Yeah, they should be able to. In the chat, there's a chat window, everybody, in the GoToWebinar, and you should be able to type, and just make sure it's all entire audience or specifically to Geert, and he'll be able to see it.
Yeah, it's best to just send it to everyone. I'll just take this example that was sent here. Is I see 10 degrees in Dallas, Texas here, but what if I'm European? I would expect the temperature to be in Celsius, while in the US I would expect the temperature to be in Fahrenheit. So that kind of information was missing from the requirements, so people could respond differently to this question, because we didn't came up with specific examples of, so what do you mean with temperature? Is the temperature in Celsius or is it in Fahrenheit? Are you only do you only want to know the temperature during the day or also during the night? We want to come up with really specific examples of our requirements, so we are also able to test these requirements. And this also helps in increasingly sharing more and more language between the business and the developer, and eventually in our product. Because in this picture here we see that the developer is talking into code, and often he creates his own domain model or classes that represent his data, and he maybe has a certain weather class, but that weather class represents something else compared to when the business is talking about the weather. So another thing that's really important to do is come up with one ubiquitous language between every party, and this is called domain-driven design. And in you doing this, you really get the same verbs in your actual code compared to the business guys who just talk about the things they know about their business. And combining this domain-driven design with behavior-driven development really helps in building certain specifications that are really clear for the developer, so he knows to build the right things. And it still might be a bit unclear to you now, but really getting this conversation up between the business, the developer, and even testers who often speak a different language as well. Having them all together work on specific examples and scenarios, and we're later going to look at specific examples, really helps in shifting left your quality, and we're going to look into that a bit more. So after this example, I'll just show you the official meaning from Wikipedia. I'm not going to read this out for you, but there are some important things that I want to point out. Is behavior-driven development really helps improving the communication between the engineers, developers, and the business professionals, and also the testers. And doing that really focused on delivering what the business actually needs instead of what the developer thought the business actually needed. So looking at a typical software project, in the agile principles, we often call these three roles that have a significant role in software development the three Amigos. So we have our business guy, who often is the product owner, we have a developer, and we have a tester. And these three roles all have to communicate to each other, but they speak different languages. The product owner talks in Word or in Confluence, or uses VSTS or TFS to record his requirements just in plain text. Then the developer knows about code, knows about unit test, knows about building applications only, and the tester knows about writing test plans and doesn't often he doesn't know any code and just interprets the requirements written by the product owner. So often these three languages have a cost of translation. And what BDD really tries to do is create one specific language used by the product owner, developer and tester together to create specifications that are testable and automated, can be automated. So we can have automated tests that run on our specifications. So when we build our mobile apps, we really build the mobile apps that our business guys really wanted instead of what we thought the business really wanted. So we already covered a bit on why we would like to do this. But if you look at some stats here, 26% of all installed mobile apps are abandoned after the first use, and 77% of Android apps lose their daily active users within the first 3 days. So there are quite a lot of apps that aren't that good, or have competitors that are just better, so people use them. So mobile app quality is really important. Quite often people think, well, it's just a simple mobile app, how hard can it be, do we need to write tests? But mobile apps are often quite complicated pieces of software. And having a good quality of this application is really important. Having it first time right is also really important. Because if you look at some certain things on a web application, if there is a bug in the web application, it's quite easy to deploy a new version to production. Some people deploy to production 50 times a day. With a mobile application, you always have to go through the full cycle of the public app stores, etc., doing their reviews and their tests, and it can take up to a couple of days before your app will show up in production. So if there is a major bug in your application, it's quite hard to fix it and get it to your users right away. So getting it the first time right on mobile is important. And to do that, if we look at a typical software development project, probably everyone knows these phases. We have plan and design, develop and build, test, deploy and release, and in the end monitor and analyzing the application. When you look at a typical project, testing and paying attention to the quality of the code and the quality of the app, most of that effort is spent during the test phase and the deployment and releasing phase. And well, this comes from the waterfall approach, where you would first really create a design, then build it, and after it's built, then you start testing it. But now in the agile world, we have to deliver, have to go through this cycle every 2 or 3 weeks. So how are we able to do all the testing and all the quality checks at the end of our sprint? It's really hard to do. So what you should do, and where behavior-driven development really helps, is shifting this model to the left, and this is called shift-left testing. What this does is shifting this attention to quality to the left. So during the plan design and during development, then you're already going to focus a lot on automating your test, automating your specifications, and really knowing right from the start that the application you're building is going to be first time right. So you don't have to run all the tests at the end of the sprint and then show it to the product owner and he says, well, this was not what I expected. When you already have those feedback loops at the start of your sprint during plan and design and the early development stages, you can adapt earlier and then build the application first time right. So we had this quick introduction on what was BDD and why we would like to do it, but how are we going to implement this? And when you look at this logo on the right, it looks a bit like a sliced cucumber, and that's where this logo actually comes from. It's from a language called Gherkin, and Gherkin is a domain-specific language, and this language helps us define features and scenarios. And these were these examples that I explained to you during our first example of how a project works and how BDD works. So the business guy, product owner, developer and tester in BDD are really going to create specific scenarios and specific features explaining the requirements. So a feature, we normally want to use a specific syntax so we can also automate this. It's a domain-specific language, so from these specifications we're actually going to turn these specifications into runnable tests in the end. So we're going to create a feature first, and a feature is written down as a best practice for user stories as well. As a certain role, I want to have a certain feature so that I can have a certain benefit. And then for each feature, we're going to write a number of scenarios. So a scenario always uses the syntax of given, when, then. So given a certain context, when I do a certain event, then there should be a certain outcome. And this really is going to turn into automated tests. And when you're familiar with test-driven development, this might sound familiar to you as well when you're using arrange, act, and assert, because this scenario is about the same. Given a certain context, then we're actually arranging the context. When a certain event occurs, and we're going to act so that this event occurs, then we're going to assert a certain outcome. So behavior-driven development is really a sort of evolution on top of test-driven development, where we're not only testing our specific units of code, we're also testing and automatically testing our specifications. And so it's also often called acceptance test-driven development, or specification by example. So let's look at a bit more clear feature and scenario. During my previous example, I already talked about a certain weather application. So a certain feature could be like this. We want to create a feature, and the feature has a title. So our feature is called Get Weather for a Location. And then we're going to write this feature as I want to show that. So as a person who has to go outside, I want to retrieve today's weather, so I know I should bring an umbrella or not. And this is really specific for this feature. and for this feature we're going to think of certain scenarios. So okay, how are we going to get the weather, and what kind of locations can we enter? So a scenario that could fit with this feature is getting the weather for a manually added location. Then we can say, well, given I open the app, when I enter Amsterdam as a location, and when I press the Get Weather button, then I want to assert that the temperature in Amsterdam is shown on the screen. And we can create a number of scenarios here. So in this scenario we're not focusing on Celsius or Fahrenheit. So I could create another scenario, getting the weather as a European, or getting the weather as an American. And we're going to look into these when we're actually going to look at the code in a few minutes. So the text I just showed you before is called Gherkin. That's just the language that was defined in the Ruby community. And this Gherkin language, the Ruby community created a tool that was being able to take these text files and convert them into runnable tests. And that tool was called a Cucumber. And in the .NET world, we already had pickles for our portable class libraries. So that's why we call this Specflow. But it's actually a port of the Cucumber Ruby tool that can create these text features and generate tests from them and run those tests automatically. And Specflow wasn't made for Xamarin specifically. You can use it any kind of .NET application. You can use it for ASP.NET applications or WPF, etc. But it also works really well with Xamarin, and especially with Xamarin in combination with Xamarin Test Cloud. So let's just try to get this into action. So I'm going to build an application and write specifications for it, and well, let's see how that goes. All the code is already stored on GitHub, so you can see the URL down here. I can also share it after the class. But if you want to look at the demos after the class for yourself, run them yourself, they are on GitHub. So what I'm going to do now is I have an application, and it's a weather application. So let me just boot my my application. And it's a fairly simple Xamarin.Forms application. I have a location text field here. I have a switch here that's called Use Imperial, a switch for using the GPS, and a button for getting the weather. And when we just press the weather, it will retrieve the weather from a API that's running somewhere on the internet. So what we can do is we want to create specifications for this application. And so we're doing it a bit backwards because we already have an application, and we're going to write specifications for the already existing application. But it gives you an idea of what the end results should look like, because otherwise if we really start with writing the specifications and then have to create the application, it would be a bit hard to explain. So what I did is I installed a certain add-in for Xamarin Studio, and it's called the Specflow add-in. And this is on GitHub on this URL by Mikey Jones. He created a port for the model develop add-in, and there's also a add-in for Visual Studio that's even better than the Xamarin Studio one, because it has some extra features. But as I'm a Mac user, I will stick with Xamarin Studio for now. And when you install this add-in, you will get some extra features in Xamarin Studio. So I have my Xamarin.Forms application here with a Android and iOS application, and I'm going to add a new project. And we're going to build a Xamarin UI test project. I'm going to call this myweather.specifications. What we're going to do now is add a number of NuGet packages. Wait, I did something. No, this was still right. I have to add some packages. So there's a Specflow NuGet package, and you can just get the newest Specflow NuGet package. Always be careful that you don't upgrade the NUnit package, because there is a newer version available, but Xamarin Test Cloud does not work with 3.5. You have to stay at 2.6.4, the latest, and we're going to add Specflow.NUnit as well. I had some trouble with the newest version here, so I'm just going to add 1.1.1 because that one worked. And because we installed the add-in, we now have some options to add a new file here. And when you look at this menu, we have a Specflow menu here, and we have 3 different options here. And the first thing we're going to do is create a feature file. And I'm going to call this getWeather. And what this does is it will just create an example for us. So it has a written feature and a certain scenario. And what I'm going to do is copy in some specific feature for our weather application. So this was the example we already showed previously on the slides, right? Getting the weather forecast, and it's a bit simpler than the one on the slides. In order to get the weather, as a person who wants to go outside sometimes, I want to be told the weather so I know what to wear. And we're going to create multiple scenarios in here. So we have a scenario, get the forecast for a manual added location in Celsius. And given I open the app, when I've entered Amsterdam as a location, when I set the imperial switch to off, I'm going to create a number of lines here, and all these lines are all going to be turned into test tabs where we can enter a certain part of test code. Looking at the arrange, act, assert, this is our arrange. Then we have some actions in our act. We're going to enter Amsterdam. We're going to set the imperial switch to off. Press the weather button, and then we're going to assert if the weather for Amsterdam is showed in Celsius. Well, we're going to create another scenario for Fahrenheit, and then we also want to be able to get the forecast for a location that's connected to our GPS location. So what's the cool thing about Specflow is that this just looks like text, but because we installed this Specflow add-in, a code behind file is being generated and always updated as soon as we update this text. And what this does is it will actually create an unit tests for our feature. So there will be a test for each and every. I have to build this. So if we look at here, we automatically get unit tests for each scenario we created in the text file, which is pretty cool. But we don't know what to add to this certain unit test yet, because this is just generated some generated unit test. So what we can do now is, let me just add a folder. What we're going to do now is add another file, and I'm going to call this get weather steps. And what this does is actually create a step definition from Specflow. And what this does is, again, you get an example. What this does is it will create a method, and that method corresponds to each line in your feature, in your scenario file. So I have a scenario here, and this unit test will look for a step for given I open the app. It's going to look for a step called when I have entered Amsterdam as a location. A step for when I set the imperial switch to off. For each of the steps, there should be a method in our step file here. So if you're actually using the Visual Studio plugin, it can generate these steps for you. But on Xamarin Studio, we have to write them ourselves. What we can do then is we can create a I just copied in all the steps here. So given I open the app, so this is actually the same text as we written in our feature file, but because we added this attribute, Specflow knows it should insert this piece of code, it should execute this method when there is a line given I open the app in this scenario. So we've created steps for all our scenarios, and as you can see here, you can also use, these strings are regular expressions, so you can also use things like these wildcards here, and in this method we can then add a parameter which will then have the values that are entered in this piece of the regular expression here. So when we create multiple features or multiple scenarios having the same string, it will be executed differently using this parameter in the code in here. And in this assert, we're actually looking for the Celsius or Fahrenheit in here. And if you look at our steps in our feature file, you actually see here then the weather for Amsterdam. This is a parameter, and the Fahrenheit or Celsius is a parameter as well. So now we have these steps, but there's still no code in it. So let's just run the application again with test recorder. What we're going to do now is take our app, record certain steps. So I'm going to clear this text box and enter Amsterdam. Oh, it's not recording. Have to do it again. Then we're going to switch off the imperial switch, turn on the GPS switch, and pressing the get weather button. As you can see here now, we're getting our code that we can actually use to enter in our step file. So, for example, these 3 lines. Just going to copy them in here. So I'll remove this one that wasn't necessary. I'd also create. So our first step could be like this. Mixed up a bit of things, so like this. So we actually created a UI test for this specific test, this specific step. When I've entered a string as a location, and I can just enter location here. And I could do the same for each and every step. And the cool thing is, by just creating a new scenario in our scenario file using the same steps in a different order, or just adding one certain extra step, we only have to implement that specific step as well, and then we're able to just run this and see the outcome of a fully running UI test. So what I'm going to do is unload this project for now, and just going to show you okay, going to look at a step file that's already been filled in. As we see here now, we when we enter the location, we have the same 3 lines as we just recorded from our test recorder. Then when we set the imperial switch to off, we just tap on this line of code. For the GPS switch to turn on, we use the same. And when we press the get weather button, we use this line of code. Those steps are all really, really simple. But when we're looking at the assert, or the then method, then the weather for a certain location should be shown in a certain format. What we're going to do then is, using Xamarin UI test, we're going to wait for a certain element, or actually first waiting for an element to disappear. because we have an activity indicator, which is a loading icon, retrieving the weather from a API is a asynchronous process. So we're going to show a loading icon, and when that loading icon is disappeared, then we're going to get the temperature label and assert that the text is not null. And if the format in our scenario contains Celsius, then we want to have a temperature with a capital C at the end, and otherwise we'll just display the capital F at the end. So now we've automated all our test steps and connected them to our Xamarin UI test. We have to add one extra file because this feature file generated a class with an unit test, but it didn't know anything about Xamarin UI test. So we have to create one more class that is the same, has the same name as this partial class. And in this partial class, we're going to add our test fixtures for Android and iOS. So our test runner actually knows that these are Xamarin UI tests, and we can run them for our different platforms. And we're also going to set a app property, so we can connect these Xamarin UI test methods in our steps here, right? Because otherwise these steps would not know about a certain Xamarin app, because that's not being generated by the Specflow because it's a generic tool. So we just create this simple class, and can be the same quite often for each project. Let's build this again. What we can see here now is for both Android and iOS, we get our unit test, and each unit test is created for each scenario that we just wrote in the feature file. And what I can do now is just run these tests. What it will do is it will run these automated UI tests on my emulator for now. My test recorder was still running, so I hope this all worked. So now our UI tests are being executed. Automatically, I can just wait and see all the tests being executed. And for each scenario, a separate UI test will be executed, so it will just kill our application, restart it again, execute all the steps again. For some reason the first step was skipped now.
Geert, while you're doing that, can we ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Sure. There was
the first test. Yeah.
There was a question in here. The step that you have in here, given that I have opened the app, is it redundant and you're just leaving it in for business clarity, or is it required?
It's not required. I just use it now because for each step, also when we're going to load it into Testcloud. Each step will create a certain screenshot. So what we could do in this step is adding some startup logic. Maybe I want to start my test at a certain page of the application. In this simple example, I just want to start with opening the app, and that could be with another step. But I'm just creating this empty step. So a bit later, when we're going to upload this to Testcloud, it will create a screenshot for each step. So after opening the app, I will get a screenshot. After entering a location, I will get a screenshot. After every step, I will get a screenshot. And I would like to see how the app looks just after opening it before touching anything else as a reference point. So that's why I added this empty step.
Perfect, thank you.
So as you can see in my window below here, all the tests are being executed for iOS, and in the test description, let me zoom out again, we just get the names of our scenarios without spaces. Too bad, but that's just how it will show. And of course, we could do this the same for Android, running those on the emulator as well. But what is a really cool feature is that we could also, instead of running them on the emulator, we can just take these tests and say run them in Testcloud. And you can choose iOS or Android, and then I'll press upload and run. And what it will do now is upload my binaries to Xamarin Testcloud. And in here for my Android application, I can just select a number of devices. So I'll just take 4 of them, some popular ones, and I always like to add a more obscure one, Samsung Galaxy Young. Never heard of that one, so it's probably a good test to test on that one as well. So just take 4 devices and have them run these tests as well. And of course, it's going to take a while. So let's just look at a previous test run that I did. And when you look at Testcloud here running these same specifications, I just get my text here. This is my feature, getting the weather forecast that we specified in our feature file, and then down here we get all our different scenarios. And what's cool about clicking a certain scenario, I just get the steps in here. Given I open the app, and there's this empty step. When I set the use GPS to on, when I set the imperial switch to off, and for each of these steps I get a screenshot of what the app did at that current moment, including the assert at the end where I can check the results between what was entered here and what came out of the API. So giving this back to a business user, confronting them, these are the results of the specifications we defined earlier, is a really powerful way of writing your specifications and having your business user accepting these the specifications he created by just showing him what each specification exactly did. I can also show you the iOS solution works exactly the same. So for each of the steps here, I can just see what is happening and getting some really nice text of what each step is doing to my application and what combining this to the specification that the business user really wanted. So looking at the time, finishing up my demo here, and really want to wrap up this talk. As a conclusion, I really hoped I showed you that BDD can really help you build the software that matters to your product owner or to your business user, and really focus on the scenarios and the functionality that he wanted, instead of making your own interpretation of his requirements. And Specflow and Xamarin Test Cloud really work together greatly to implement behavior-driven development. And really hope that this demo proved to you that you can create a shift-left model using this, so your business users really involved in creating these good specifications and having this attention to quality really early on, instead of executing your manual tests. So with that, I would like to wrap up and open for some other questions.
I'll start with the ones that are here already, and then people can add in as well. So the first question is, what is your experience on business people accepting the Gherkin syntax, because it seems quite verbose?
Yeah, so it's a question that is always asked after this this introduction. The syntax is human readable, and people often think that, oh, this is just some human readable syntax, I'll just give this to my business people and they will have to create these specifications by themselves. That is not what BDD is all about. BDD is about creating a conversation with your business people and your testers and your developers, and together coming in the end writing down these specifications. So what I often would like to do is just put the three of you in a room and brainstorm about these features and the specifications. Maybe just use those post-its and create stuff from there, or just write on a whiteboard. And after you've come to a conclusion that what are the different scenarios, what are the different cases that we want to go through, then you just specify them using the Gherkin language. And it could be that your tester will write down the specifications, or the developer will do this, or the business user does this. In the end, it doesn't matter who does it, as long as the three amigos in your project are all aligned that those are the specifications that we're going to build.
Awesome. The next two questions are actually related, so I'm going to kind of combine them together. Essentially, both people are asking about CI and whether or not you're always running them locally, or can you use something like VSTS, or can you set up a CI environment where you're actually running these tests?
Yeah, so these tests, technically, they're just Xamarin UI tests. So you can run them in your build in VSTS or whatever other tool you're using. So yeah, they can be automated, run automatically as well, just like any other test.
And do you have any suggestions about managing Test Cloud, given that sometimes Test Cloud, you know, it's got lots of other tests that it's running at the same time, and so the time delay for starting a test to actually getting Test Cloud to generate results can sometimes be a bit unpredictable. Are there any strategies you've used to be able to sort of allow you to do that sort of automated testing, but yet still incorporate Test Cloud into the process?
Yeah, that's always a tricky bit, depending on how fast do you want to have your results. I often run smaller sets of devices more often, so just pick a couple of devices and run tests on them really often, and then once a week, or depending on your scenario, on your application, then during the weekend or during a night do a more extensive test where you run on a lot of devices. But of course it always takes a number of minutes before you will get results from your build back. That's just part of TestCloud. That's not gonna be any faster.
So kind of segregating things is probably the better approach there. Okay.
Yeah. So can I see these questions? I don't see any.
Yeah, you should be.
So much.
Yeah, there's a questions tab.
Yeah, it's empty.
Oh, it's empty. That's interesting. Oh, you know why? Hold on. I know why. I think. There's only 2 other questions here.
Okay, just ask them.
So one of them was, can we use these tests in cross-browser testing? I'm assuming that's where you have a web view, and so you're trying to test things.
Yeah, Specflow is able to do this, but often best practice is not to actually test on the UI itself, but maybe run on a view model. That's a possibility that you could do, having these tests really fast and in your build without the delay of TestCloud. So you could do that with JavaScript as well. If you have some Angular website or stuff like that, you could execute those calls directly as well. I'm not that much of a web guy, so I think it's possible. I don't know. Did I just disconnect, or did you disconnect me? Hello?
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we can hear you. You dropped out for a second, but yes, you're there.
Okay. So did you hear my answer, or did I drop out earlier?
You dropped out right towards the end of it.
Okay, yeah, so yes, I think it's possible, but I'm not that much of a web guy, so I don't know the details about what is or is not possible.
Okay, and you should be able to see questions now as well. There should be a questions tab for you.
Okay, let me see. Ah, yes. Now we also see the degrees, etc., which I wasn't being able to see.
Yeah, that's right. They went into the questions tab.
Okay, last question, because let me see this.
So I'll help out a little bit because I can see the ones that were towards the end.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
So can I use this to write acceptance tests to test code below the UI and also still run it in TestCloud?
You could do this to write acceptance tests. Yeah, that's it's always a question about the business. How far do they want to go? Do they want to just if all these tests are green, it's automatically accepted, or I always want to have a manual a check as well. But it is really close to acceptance test, because it's just testing the specific features that the business wanted.
Great. And then one more here. Is it possible to use the same Gherkin steps with different step definitions to target view models in the real UI?
You could do something. What is a best practice? Let me go back to the code quickly. Is within a certain step. Here I just created a line of code that is focusing on this marked field that has a automation ID of location entry, because this is a Xamarin.Forms application. But often in the traditional Xamarin approach, these controls could have different IDs on iOS or on Android. So you would have to create a certain abstraction of of the actions that you actually want to execute here. So you would often create a interface that has a class called tab location entry, for example, and you implement that in 3 different ways. One way to click on the iOS application, one way for the Android application, and maybe a third way that just executes the code on a certain command on the view model. You could do stuff like that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much today. I think we're out of time, but I really appreciate you coming and hanging out with us for the last hour or so and for this
awesome it was fun.
Discourse on behavior-driven development. And just so everyone knows, I don't think we have any guest lectures through the rest of this year, and we'll be shutting down for the last week and then firing everything back up in January. So we'll have a bunch of new content showing up in January, and we're looking forward to another great year. Thanks for being a Xamarin University subscriber. Thanks, Geert.
Thank you. Bye-bye.